Talking Paranormal.
Okay, I'm here this week with Ghost Joe. Hiya, Joe.
Hey, how you doing, Chris? How's it going?
So I have a little spot on your podcast, and obviously that will be the main focus of the advertising for this bit. But tell me a bit about yourself and your podcast before we get into it.
Sure, yeah. By the way, I love your content and stuff. You guys help me out tremendously with the content that you provide. But it's called the Warped Reality Podcast. I'm Ghost Joe. I'm the host. I'm a paranormal enthusiast. I never call myself an expert. You know, nobody. I think that's a big term that a lot of people say. Like, there's no experts in the paranormal. You know, because it's a pseudoscience or whatever. I would never consider myself an expert in anything. But I've been doing the podcast for about 2 years. I've had experiences since I was a kid. I wouldn't say hundreds of experiences, but a handful of very, very convincing experiences to me.
Okay.
Since I was 6 years old.
Wow.
I'm married with 2 small girls, living in New York, and I do this. I'm a corrections officer, prison guard, and I do this whole podcasting thing to kind of keep far away from that, to try and think of the furthest thing. People tell me, oh, you should do a podcast about corrections and about, you probably have a million stories. I do, but I do this so I could take my mind off of it, so I don't have to think about that stuff. I don't want to think about it when I'm not there.
Yeah. Okay, then. So let's dive into some of your early experiences.
Sure. So the first experience that I had, I was 6 years old, 6 or 7, I would assume, and I was sleeping in my grandparents' apartment in an apartment building in Queens, New York City, and it was me in the bed, my cousin who was like 2 or 3 years older than me, and my sister. It was the 80s, so it was,
Yeah.
So we were all sleeping in the same bed, and I wake up in the middle of the night. And now, just to give you guys a perspective, the bed was, obviously on a wall. And if you look straight ahead from laying on the bed, you could see the hallway. And there's doors, of the rooms on either side of the hallway. And I wake up in the middle of the night. Everybody's sleeping. All the lights are out. And I look and I see this figure that's like a white transparent figure, and it's like floating, and you could tell by the way it's moving. You're like, that's not, what is that? And I'm looking and I look really hard, and I see like it's floating in the air. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I woke up my cousin. Amanda, and I was like, well, look at this. And she saw the same thing.
Cool.
So I have somebody to validate that forever now, which is great. And so we both were looking at it, and of course, me being 6, 7 years old, I got scared. I screamed. All the lights went on, and that was the last I saw of that apparition. But yeah, since then, I've always been, crazy about trying to look into everything.
So my question then, we've already established that you have someone else see it, so it's not a dream. But you say it was white in the darkness. Was it very, very soft light, so you saw it was white, or was it glowing in some way?
I wouldn't say it was glowing. I mean, it's weird to explain, I guess, but I mean, I guess you could say it was glowing if it was dark and it was white and you could see through it, but it was more soft, like a soft white, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But definitely transparent, and you could tell easily by looking at it that it was not, a living, being.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And there's never any other sign of it, never any history uncovered.
So actually, I didn't know this until a few years ago. So my dad has always been interested in paranormal and a lot of the same stuff as me. and he had actually told me a few years back. He goes, where did you see that? And I said, I saw it in this room or whatever. And I explained to him. He goes, well, that was my old room when I was a teenager. He goes, when I used to lay in that bed, he goes, I used to hear whispers of somebody whispering my name when I was laying in bed. He
Right.
goes, and then he said, and one time I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I said, if there's a God, give me a sign. He said, and the door slammed shut in front of me. He
Hmm.
goes, and it was like stuck, like I couldn't get it open right away.
Yeah.
So that again kind of validated to me, like, all right, well, I guess what I saw was what I saw.
Yeah. I'm really excited that somebody else saw it at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't know what I was thinking. I was 6. I guess I was just scared, and I'm like, what's going on? And I just woke up. Luckily my cousin was right next to me, and I was able to wake her up.
Yeah.
My sister, if she was on she would have just said, go back to sleep, and she wouldn't even have looked up. But at
No.
least my cousin looked, saw the same thing as me, and we could still validate it to this day what we saw.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned on one of your early shows or your podcast I listened to that when you were young, you have asked out for things and had things happen. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I don't, I definitely don't condone that, especially, and I also don't do that now because I live in a house with my 2 small girls.
Yeah.
I don't need anything, coming over here and like scaring my children, but yeah, growing up, in my 20s or, my teens, I would say, hey, if there's anything here, give me a sign. And I would get things like voices, or something would knock over, something would fall over, or one time my friend and I were sitting on the couch watching TV, and he used to have some kind of some paranormal experiences as well also. So whenever we got together, there was always like this strong energy.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there watching TV, and I said to him, I said, hey, I said, have you had anything like paranormal happen to you lately? He's like, no, you? I said, no. As soon as we both said that, the remote control that was on the coffee table in front of us, nobody was around it, nobody was near it, there was no windows open, picked up and flipped off the table. Almost as if somebody just swatted it off the table really hard, and it went flying across the room. And we both looked at each other and said, well, I guess that's it. There's our sign, right?
Yeah.
That's, like he was like, oh, you didn't have any, whatever it was that was listening. Oh, you didn't have any experiences? All right, here you go. you know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was one of the craziest things. Another time with the same friend, now just to give you a little backstory, and actually I'm going to be putting out a bonus episode of the podcast probably in the next couple days, in the middle of October. And what it's going to be about is the Kreischer Mansion. It's in Staten Island, New York, and it's one of the most haunted mansions in New York City. A lot of people don't even know about it, but it's been on the Travel Channel. It's been on Jack Osborne's Portal to Hell, and
Yeah.
it's even been on the Dr. Oz show when he was doing some paranormal episode. And it's a very, very haunted building. Um, a lot of tragedy that happened there and stuff. So I used to work at a rehearsal studio. I'm a guitar player also, and I used to work at a rehearsal studio down the street from this place, like literally about around the corner from it, very, very close. And my friends, of course, it was cool to hang out at a rehearsal studio, bands and stuff going in and out. So a lot of my friends would come and hang out with me while I was working. So one day they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go up to the Kreischer Mansion. We're gonna take some pictures outside." All right, cool, right? So about 10, 15 minutes later, they start running back to the studio, and they ran in. I said, what's the matter? They said, we saw something, and it was chasing after us. I said, yeah, okay, all right, whatever, that's whatever. From that point on, for the next 8 or 9 months since the place was open, PA systems, the speaker systems would turn on by themselves behind locked doors. Lights would flicker on and off.
Hmm.
And then one time that was actually a couple times that were very, very crazy with this was I was sitting in the rehearsal studio by myself. There was nobody there. We always had late hours. So like it would open up at 9 o'clock at night and
Yeah.
close at like 3 o'clock in the morning. but I'd get there like 6 o'clock or whatever, set everything up. So I'm sitting in the office, which you could see the front door because there was a little window. So you could see the front door from the window. And I was sitting in the office, and there was the office door that was closed in front of me. And I'm sitting there. All of a sudden, the lights started flickering, and the computer started freaking out.
Right.
And no matter what I was doing, I couldn't turn the computer off. It wasn't turning off. And that happened for a good 20 or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
After that, it stopped. Everything went back on. I said, "Oh, okay, good. Everything's back on." All of a sudden, I hear knocking on the office door, like
Yeah.
ding, 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 knocking, and I'm like, "There's nobody here right now." You know, I'm by myself. You know, and this was after they ran back and everything. So I'm like, oh man, I said, now I can't even sit in here by myself.
Yeah.
When this stuff,
Yeah.
because it freaked me out. I was only 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. I had a lot of experiences, but when something's knocking on your door, and it actually knocked a few times, a couple of different times. And the first time I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pretend like I didn't hear that, and I'm going to play on the computer. And then it knocked again, and I said, all right, I'm going to have to open the door, otherwise it's just going to keep happening. So I ran over there, I opened the door, nothing there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a very, very crazy occurrence. And then the thing that happened with my friend in that same building, there were bands rehearsing, and me and him were just standing in the middle of the hallway. So I don't know what we were talking about, but we were both standing there, and I guess listening to the band, because there was an Ozzy Osbourne tribute band in one of the rooms that I love Ozzy, and we were listening to the band, and right in between us, we heard like a loud sigh, like somebody went,
Yeah.
but like directly in the middle of us, and it
Yeah.
was unmistakable. So we were like, okay, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah.
Like you're like, all right, you heard that, right? He's like, yeah, you heard that, right? I said, yeah. you know but yeah, I mean, that place was crazy with the energy and stuff. And so we're going to be talking to the caretaker slash owner
Oh, great.
of the Kreischer Mansion. And yeah, it's actually a thing that I'm doing with my dad, that we're doing like this paranormal talk thing for the community television out there, and I might throw it on YouTube also.
Yeah.
No competition. But yeah, just to throw it up there and stuff. And about, because he's had tons of experiences, this guy, being the caretaker, uh and to the point where he had actually said that they had news reporters in there that were going to spend the night, about 4 or 5 news reporters, and they all brought their sleeping bags and they were all ready. He said they were out by 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They ran out.
Yeah.
you know
Well, that's great. That's a lot of very strong experiences. I mean, that's the sort of thing that we've asked for years. Can you throw something? And you as a kid getting a remote control gun, and if we're asking for speaking out, you get a breath. It's like, what does that mean, though? Does it mean that you have a strong energy? What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I think I used to call myself a magnet, with it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's different. It's to me, I think it's cool, because nothing, luckily, has ever been anything demonic or mean, like, to me. It's always just been, hey, I'm here type signs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm good with that. Even when I'm doing my podcast, because I always do my podcast late at night,
Yeah.
because I don't want my kids to disturb me, or I don't want them to hear what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'll do my podcast, and I have it in my basement. And to the left side of me is a sliding glass door that leads out to my backyard. So when I'm doing the podcast, obviously everything is dark, everything is quiet. There's nobody in my backyard, but I'll be getting ready for an interview, and sure enough, I'll hear a knock on my door, or something will fall in the room.
Yeah.
Like saying like, "Hey, we know what you're doing right now." you
Yeah.
know?
I
So
mean,
I still get things.
there is the thought that when you're focusing on watching a program, watching a film, just talking to our friends about it, that you are opening up. And that is a process that our team uses when we do protection. It is basically a chance to put your head directly at that headspace and allow that communication to open up. It's almost like you do tune in to the spirit world in some way. So yeah, there's some probably, well, your kind of evidence that if you are thinking about doing a podcast and things are happening, or when you say do something and prove it to me, things happen. Maybe that there is like an antenna that you beam some sort of signal.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny too because there's some things that I'm talking about on my podcast. For example, I did a segment, I don't even remember which episode, but I did a segment on the black-eyed children.
Oh yeah.
And the lore behind that is if you're thinking about them or talking about them, they may show up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about it and that's it. And I'm just going to get off the subject because I don't want those little things, knocking on my basement door. I can't
Yeah.
handle that. Those creepy, those creepy black-eyed children.
Yeah. So, what do you prefer talking about on your show? Do you like the ghost stuff more, or the cryptids, or the UFOs, or?
So the whole ghost and haunting thing has always been my thing. I've only really just been talking about UFO, alien, and the cryptid stuff since I started the podcast.
Yeah.
But I think it's super interesting. I mean, I've always believed in aliens and UFOs. I've never actually seen anything, and I'm kind of hoping that now that I live upstate and it's very dark and I have a night job and stuff, I'm gonna see something, and I promise you, I'm gonna get out of my car and I'm gonna videotape it. I'm gonna get a clear picture of this, the thing.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna be too freaked out too, but that's my thought right now going into it, that I really want to catch something. But yeah, the UFO and alien thing I've always believed in because it's kind of silly to think that we're the only ones in this entire universe.
Sure.
Now, I don't know. I mean, there's tons of theories about the cryptid stuff and aliens, and a lot of the theories, a lot of people think that they're linked in some way.
Yeah, I've heard that rumor.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a plausible thing or, because people think, oh, well, because there's been times when people have seen Bigfoot at the same time as seeing a UFO.
Yeah.
There's been different reports.
Stuff, isn't it? At the same time as Bigfoot.
Right. So they're not sure if maybe Bigfoot's like a scout, or whatever. So a lot of people feel that Bigfoot might be interdimensional, because people have seen him just pop up out of nowhere, like almost as if he's walking through a door and then go back out like into like thin air kind of.
Yeah.
So I don't really have, I don't know, like I just feel like maybe Bigfoot might be just a cryptid, like a lot of animals were cryptids before they were discovered,
Yeah. I thought that was remarkable, the fact that gorillas were up till recently thought to be cryptids.
Yeah.
Mind.
Me too. Gorillas of all things, right? Yeah.
I think it was kangaroos as well, but then the outback is so massive. If somebody described a kangaroo to you, you'd think it was made up, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's and think about the ocean and the waters and stuff. I mean, there's so much of that we've never discovered, that we haven't even touched yet.
That is proper alien life when you go and look at those things down there. I hate the ocean. I'm scared of all that. I'm not scared of dead people, but the ocean, I just have to look at a picture of a deep ocean and I feel like I'm falling into it.
Right.
Now, I started talking to my son about this, wondering whether it was a past life, that I drowned in a past life. Because I have this deep-seated memory of something that never happened to me, of drowning in the deep ocean. I have a friend in the team, Sue. She went to Egypt and she was like, I feel like I'm home. Overwhelming. And because the ghosts are always telling us that we're reincarnated,
Right. Wow.
that we were like, that's an interesting theory.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, for me, my biggest fear, and it's probably the worst fear to have as a prison guard, is I'm severely claustrophobic.
Right.
So, and it's gotten worse over the years too. But yeah, I'm very, very claustrophobic where I can't even sit in the back of a car that where my feet are underneath the seat. I
Yeah.
start freaking out. I start
Wow.
freaking out, like I can't move. I can't, like I feel like I'll never be able to get out of that seat. You
Yeah.
know, like the fear of being stuck in a small
Yeah.
space. You know,
Mm.
so I mean that could be something from maybe, who knows, maybe I got buried alive when I was in in a
Yeah.
previous life. You don't know. You know.
It makes a certain logical sense, doesn't it? And just like the theory of birthmarks being some sort of carryover from your previous life, I don't know. There are some compelling cases about children who know their way around African towns and stuff out there. And about that famous case, I can't remember his name, but this young lad who saw pictures of old Hollywood and was like, "That's me." Have you heard about that?
Yeah, yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah, I mean, I think that stuff is super interesting. I mean, I definitely would love to have somebody on the show interview, something like that, or, you know, I'm trying to get people on the show that know about like time travel type stuff, or,
Yeah.
interdimensional stuff, or ESP, telekinesis,
Mm.
but you never really, it's difficult to find somebody that's credible in those aspects, I think.
Yeah, like
You
you
know.
say, that's died out. ESP and telekinesis. I mean, Uri Geller was probably the last proponent of that sort of thing, and even he's stopped going on chat shows and stuff, spoon bending and all that. But yeah, I guess like mediums, maybe they're still about and they
Yeah.
battle for credibility, don't they? But
Y-
that's yeah,
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm one of those people. I mean, I'm not. I always consider myself a believer more than anything. I'm a realist also. I mean, but I'm more on the believer side than anything. But mediums and psychics are, you have to really, really impress me, for me to really, because I feel like, look, I'm a correction officer, so I deal with 100 different personalities a day, you
yeah,
know, and we have to learn a certain thing called cold reading, basically. Like you
mm,
have to know how to read that person's, mannerisms, how,
mm,
like, all right, well, that guy's acting different from yesterday. Why is he acting like that? Or
yeah,
so I feel like if I could do it, these people that are professionals at it
yeah,
are amazing cold readers.
mm,
And I even like said to somebody, they're like, oh, well, what's cold reading? I'm like, well, all right, I'm a big guy, so if I walk into a place, they might say, oh, I see somebody, I see a badge, in front of me, or,
mm,
do you have anybody in your family that's, law enforcement? Well, I am, and then
yeah,
there it is, or oh, um they might think I'm construction or something. Oh, well, I see somebody in your family that's, I see construction, I see a hammer. Okay, well, I'm not but my brother-in-law is a contractor,
yeah,
and then there you go, there's the link right there, and they
yeah.
build from there. So it's really, really difficult for me to, I mean, I believe that there are real people that could do that,
I live in
you
hope
know.
that there is for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you say, I think I am happy to. I would desperately want it all to be true, but my real base is always show me, explain to me.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Like, I'm gonna be one of those guys that goes in to see a psychic or a medium, and I'm not gonna wear any kind of clothing that's gonna give anything away. I'm not, I'm not gonna be a jerk about it, but I'm gonna be very tight-lipped, just yes
Yeah.
and no. Like, I want you to actually tell me something that you can't find on social media about me. You know?
Problem is, you generally have to book these sort of places, and that gives them
Mhm.
time to go through your socials.
That's true.
So when I see a medium and they're telling me the name of my brother, I'm like, well, I know the name of my brother. What
Right.
use is that is if that's your medium speciality, telling me my brother's name, utterly useless.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, that's my thing too. So I'm very, very skeptical in a way on a lot of that stuff. But I do believe that it is true. I mean, I've had people, my mom passed away like 12, 11, 12 years ago, and I've had people that come up to my dad just out of the blue while he's shopping, and somebody will come up to him and say, "Hey, by the way, your wife says this, or your wife,
Mm.
somebody that my dad's never met before.
Yeah.
And then that person will just turn around and walk away. And
Yeah.
that's it. Those people are the real people, not
Mm.
not the people that, I mean, I always put it on blast on the podcast also, where, somebody will be saying, oh, I went to a psychic and they said for a cleansing, it's going to cost me $5,000. Like, those people are ripoffs.
Yeah.
Go to a priest, go to a church, go to somewhere. No, you don't. No, those people are con artists.
I heard you saying that, and I remember really agreeing with that. Yeah. As soon as money's mentioned, I think your integrity goes out of the window,
I mean, I understand that people have to make a living, and I get that too, but not when you're asking for. If somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, I think my house is," and you're telling them, "Oh yeah, your house has a demon in it, but it's going to cost you $3,000 to get rid of the demon." Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Or yeah, well, this spell is only going to last for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
Mm.
Because your cell phone bill is due in 2 weeks, so you need the money
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's like those are the people that really. I actually um had seen somebody on one of the Facebook groups, and she had said a while back. This is going back a while. I mentioned this on my podcast, but a while ago, and she had went to a psychic, and the psychic had told her that and this is like a big no-no with psychics, but the psychic told her, you're gonna die when you're 30 years old or something like that, right? So now she's 2 weeks into her 31st birthday,
Mm.
and she feels like she's on borrowed time right now. She's like, I'm seeing all these different things in my house, all this stuff is happening, and I feel like I'm getting haunted by something, like haunted by death almost,
Yeah.
because she passed her 30th birthday. She's
Yeah.
31 now. And I was just like, no, that's no. First off, I said, you should go back. I don't know if you should go back to the psychic and punch him in the face and be like, did you see that coming? Like, because
Yeah.
first off, and mind you, I wouldn't want her to die anyway, but I'm saying, first off, that was a complete lie because you're 31 and you're still around, which is a good thing.
Mm.
Um, but now you're thinking about it where you're still believing the psychic.
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously it was a waste of money and it was a waste of time because, and it was a waste of a year and a half or whatever it was of worrying about it.
Mm. Yeah, that's awful.
Just people like that really gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
If honestly, if there's fakes out there and they say, oh, your wife or your son or whatever, they're always looking over you and this and that. Okay, even if they're not being truthful like they might still be giving closure to somebody or
Mm.
still making somebody feel better,
Yeah.
but not when you're telling somebody that they're gonna die or that there's a demon after them or something like that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you stand on demons then as an American? Because they seem much bigger in your country. I'm thinking Ghost Adventures. Everything's a demon, isn't it? How do you feel
Don't,
about that?
don't get me started with Ghost Adventures. I hate that guy. I honestly I cannot stand that guy.
Yeah.
He goes into these haunted places with his 500 pair of jeans, $500 jeans and his slick
Yeah.
back hair and oh, if you like pushing people down the stairs, why don't you try pushing me down the stairs? Like, stop,
Yeah.
dude. Stop doing that. You're
Yeah.
stupid. Like you sound like an idiot. But
Yeah.
people like it. He's a good-looking guy, so people watch him, and
Yeah.
I'm sure most of his fan base is females, you know, and but yeah, I mean, those ghost hunter shows, I don't know, I like them, but at the same time, if you're a ghost hunter, and I'm sure you could attest to this too. I mean, sometimes you get scared. I don't, but these guys get scared and they run out of the house, or they like you're supposed to go towards it. Like you want to know what made that noise.
Yeah.
You know, you want to try and capture what made that noise. You're not going to run out because you heard or something touched you. No, you don't. Yeah, it's scary, but then why are you doing it if you're just going to run away and not, you know? So that's
Yeah.
why I was never really too crazy about, especially Ghost Adventures. Ghost
Mm.
Hunters, the original Ghost Hunters, the first
Yeah.
couple seasons were great
Yes.
because out of like 10 episodes, maybe 2 of the episodes, they said, yeah, we found something. We think it's ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, they're like, nah, it's a leak. You know, there's a leak
Yeah.
coming from your attic. There's, you know, we're going to fix that for you. You know, this, you know,
Yeah.
because they were plumbers.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I loved about the first 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters was because it was more realistic,
Yeah.
you
Because
know.
we have you heard of Most Haunted over there?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they it was Carl who put out an invitation to get in touch with him about doing a show. Like you put your show ideas into him. This was when they had their own little TV company brewing, which kind of fell through, I think. But yeah, I applied for that. I sent in my show idea, and I certainly never got any reply, and there was never any follow up on this on any social media that I was following of his. So no, I don't know what happened to the whole idea of send your ideas in, but you know, I was proposing that we get like ghost hunters, we get people who are good with electronics. These meters that we're always using, none of us are electricians, none of us are scientists, none of us really know what they mean when they are picking something up. You know exactly what's happening. We need some like people who have an idea of how magnetism works and stuff like that. So we're not just jumping at shadows. But I was thinking we would never get a second season of my boring Ghost Hunters plus Real Guys, you know? Like
Right.
like you say, for a scientifically realistic ghost program, it would not get picked back up by the studio or whatever. You know, it'd
Yeah.
be dull. So I think that's where the pressure comes to invent things or well, I think I don't necessarily think they invent things. I think they compile it for the edit in a certain way that's entertaining.
Right. I mean, I know that there were some. I don't remember the name of the show. It was a long time ago, but there was a show that had did a special on this place called the Old Bermuda Inn, which is also in Staten Island, New York, very very haunted place. And I remember there was it was before the Travel Channel was doing any kind of haunted stuff. I guess it was probably the Sci-Fi Channel. And I remember them saying the people that were there because I used to live in Staten Island. They were saying, "Oh yeah, you know, they kept telling us put more smoke in there, or you know, like they were amping it up to make it seem more spooky, you know." So I'm like, I don't even want to watch that now, you know,
Yeah.
like give me. I know a lot of people like that stuff, but give me the boring tape, you know. That's what I want to watch. I want to watch the real thing, you
Yes.
know. But yeah, that's why I was never really crazy. But going back to I know we kind of went off on a tangent there with that, but with the whole demon thing, I do believe that there are demons, obviously. Um, if they're around all the time, I don't know. I don't know how they honestly how they work, but I do have a little story with something with that too, though.
Okay.
So when I got all my podcasting stuff and I was, you know, doing the podcast for a while, I said, you know what? I want to try maybe I'll try and do voiceover or audiobook narration. So, you know, there's a website where you go, it's affiliated with Amazon, and you go on the website and you could um, audition for audiobooks. And
Mm.
you send them a little clip. And if they like the way your voice sounds, they'll email you back and say, yeah, I want you to do my audiobook. So I did like 6 or 7 in this one shot. And the only one that got back to me was an encyclopedia of demons. And yeah, it was basically the book was 3,500 demon names.
Wow.
And it told the whole lore of them and said all the different names of you know, the demon, what they're called, what they're known as, all
Yeah.
that's all the history of every demon, of 3,500 demons. And I was actually still gonna do it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not scared. I'm still gonna do it because it's the only one that got back to me, and I want to try it out. But then, I actually passed on it. I don't know if I don't know if I'm making excuses, but I honestly passed on it because I started reading the foreword, and I got like halfway through, and it took me forever because I couldn't pronounce most of those
Oh
Latin
yeah.
words. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
couldn't pronounce half those names, half the words. I said, this book, it's like 50,000 words. This book
Yeah.
is going to take me 2 years to do.
Yeah.
You know, so I said, and then on top of everything, you know, it's a book about demons. So I'm like, you know what? I know that, you know, my buddy Carl Johnston, who was actually on the
Yeah.
first 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters. He's not really my buddy. He was, you know, on the show a few times. Awesome
Yeah.
guy though. And he had told me, he goes, yeah, it's a good thing you didn't do that. You know, because just saying their names, and if obviously if you believe it, like you were saying, you
Mm.
know, you could manifest something or something could come into the. And I said, you know what? I can't even afford to have one demon in my house, let alone
Yeah.
3,500 of them. You know, so
Yeah.
I and what's funny though is that when I emailed a lady, like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do it. She was just like, okay, as if like it's probably a common thing that
Yeah.
people just, you know, because the book has been around for 15 years and you
Mm.
haven't had anybody to narrate it yet.
Yeah.
So it's got to mean something that
Uh,
nobody wants to narrate a book on demons,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they would tell me, no, it's a good thing that you didn't go about and do that because it could manifest stuff. So
Yeah. Well, that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. We had recently two demons follow us round, allegedly. And what I'm trying to drill down on is the exact definition of what we had following us, because I can't imagine the Christianity, the Bible version of a demon. I think it's just more of a negative. Is it just a negative person, or is it something that was never alive? You know, I want the spirits to tell me for one thing, but I also have, you know, want to know people's opinions, because I've heard a lot of people say it might have been the guy on your show saying low-level malicious entities will be hovering around everywhere, and when you have the intention to do like a Ouija board or whatever, that they will instantly go, "Oh, I'll grab onto
mm,
that," you know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not like the devil's left-hand man is going to come and talk to me in the back of my van on a Saturday night, you know.
Right, right. I'm sure they got better
That,
things going on, right?
yeah. We had Lucifer come through in the van, a stone circle. There was not the mosquitoes, the meaties, the little flies biting us, and we were like, we'll go in the back of the van, and yeah, it was absolutely incredible, fast Lucifer, and we were
Hmm.
like, you're not Lucifer, you're not. You know what I mean? Why are you in the back of my van? You know, it just makes sense. And eventually, the guy wasn't Lucifer, but he had supposedly sacrificed at this place children way back when.
Wow.
And he was a nasty guy, but it wasn't Lucifer. That was my point. But even when I said, okay, if you're Lucifer, then do something. And I remember both my meters, two separate meters, just went up to full. And I was, for a split second, I was like, whoa,
Wow.
maybe you are something, you know. So yeah, that's the mystery I'm trying to unpick. What exactly these low level demons are.
You
You
know,
know.
and I know you had said something like this on one of your YouTube videos, and actually I've always been saying the same type of thing. Only I guess in the New York way, you would say the New York City way is, you know, if you're an a-hole in life, you're going to be an a-hole in death. You know, that's just, you're the same person in death as you are in life. So if you
Yeah.
were a jokester in life, you're going to be a jokester in death, you
Mm.
know? So if, you know, that's why you have spirits that are nasty
Yeah.
you know, mean, and you could see like in their face. I saw one thing one time actually with that same friend that I had the other couple occurrences with. we went to another spot on Staten Island that was Staten Island has a lot of haunted areas for being such a small borough, and there's a place called the Conference House, which I think was featured on some TV shows as well also, and part of I think the Revolutionary War was fought there, and part of the Declaration of Independence was signed there by some people, so it's a very historical place, and it was owned by this guy Christopher Billop. It was his house, and he was a very nasty guy, and he actually had um had thrown a pass at his slave at the time, and the slave like said no, and he pushed her down the stairs and she died.
Right.
So not a very nice guy. And I remember we went there one late night, and we're looking at the office that he used to be at. Now the caretakers would never go in the back of the house, they were always in the front, where the regular house area is. And we're looking in this window, in the middle window that was in the back of the house where the caretakers don't go, and we see this image of a guy. We see his face, and he was giving us like this stare, like get out of here. I don't want you here right now.
Yeah.
And we've been there a bunch of times, but just this one night, he was like, leave. And we were both looking at it, and I said, "You see that?" It's the same type of thing we always do. I said, "You see that?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Let's get the hell out of here. He don't want us here. He
Yeah.
does not want us here. Let's go." And we left. So yeah, if you're a jerk in life, you're gonna be a jerk in death. So that was my point with that. And I remember you saying something similar to that in one of your videos as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we get a lot of jokers, and a lot of the people who spell 666 first and do real obvious Halloweeny sort of things are generally teenagers who come
Right.
through. They died, but they're doing what typical internet trolls would do on the Ouija board,
Right, because I'm sure they probably like look and they're like, "Oh, look at these guys sitting here with this board,
Yeah.
thinking that they're gonna catch this and that. Let's give them a show. Let's see what we can do."
Because that's what us in the team say we'd do. As soon as we die, we'll go to a ghost team and we'll be Satan. That's what we'll do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got two segments on your podcast that I'm thinking of. One is I read it on Reddit, which I think is a really cool feature, and the other, the haunted eBay section. Can you just tell the
Sure.
viewers about?
Yeah, so I read it on Reddit is basically I'll pick a random Reddit post that somebody had posted about a paranormal experience, and I read it. Mind you, too, though, I am from New York City, so I might interject certain things here and there about my opinion on things, but because that's my thing too. Like I said, I'm a realist, so if I might come up with a paranormal story that just happened or something that's in the news, and I might get halfway through and say, you know what, this is crap. I don't even know why I'm reading this.
Yeah.
But I'd rather put that out there, and I'll read it and think it's crap, so you don't have to read it, But
Yeah.
that's what I read it on Reddit. And then haunted eBay. I've always, as a kid, I mean, after eBay obviously started, one of my favorite things to do was to go on eBay and look at the everything else section, because you
Yeah.
always find crazy things on there that people are trying to sell.
Yeah.
Potato chips that look like Jesus Christ, or somebody actually tried selling a bridge, like just a random bridge for like $20,000 or something like that in the middle of nowhere. Like it was just weird stuff. So I always enjoyed going on that everything else section, and in that everything else section is the paranormal section.
Right.
So I go on there and I'll read some of the ones that I think are kind of entertaining and interesting. I try not to read too many of the haunted doll ones, because there's so many haunted dolls on eBay.
Yeah. Easy
Like,
money.
I mean, so many of them. It's crazy. So I try and steer away from them, but some of them are very interesting as well. So, with some very interesting backstories.
Yeah. I learned recently, and I'm not ashamed to admit that a Dybbuk box, I've seen a bits about them and I always wondered what they were. I could never get to grips with how you can trap a spirit in a box, because spirits can just move through things.
Right.
Didn't make sense to me. And then I saw it on another Ghost Team's post. They'd done a little bit of digging, and it was on Wikipedia that the Dybbuk box was completely made up for a film. There's no such thing.
Wow.
And so this whole craze of I've got a Dybbuk box, it's like, just feed back to where that started. It's made up for a film. There's no such,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's another reason why, like, I mean, on every one of my shows, I try and do a paranormal segment where I talk about some kind of ghost or haunted. I'll try and talk about a UFO or alien kind of story. And then I'll try and talk about a cryptid story also, or I'll feature a cryptid. And that was one of the things with the whole cryptid thing is that I'll come up with a cryptid. I'll look up one and I'll be like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I find out it's a creepypasta one that's made up on the internet. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I'm not going to read that then. I don't want to read a creepypasta thing, you know, like, because we know it's made up, you know, we all know that the creepypasta stuff is all made up. So I wasn't going to, you know, I steer away from that stuff. But, you know, I try and find the ones that are deep into folklore and stuff like that, that have been around that, you know, I'd love to get somebody on the show that has actually seen some of the other things other than, you know, just Bigfoot. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of people have seen Bigfoot though, which is pretty crazy. But you know, like I just featured the Thunderbird, you know, which is a gigantic bird. Now you could say, I mean, there's plenty of eagles out there that are huge, huge eagles.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, could it have been an eagle? Sure, you know, but people are saying it wasn't. You know, some people say that the Thunderbird has a wingspan of 160 feet.
Yeah. I remember you saying that it was insane.
Yeah, the thing that I thought was funny though with that was that it said between like 5 feet and 160 feet. I said, well, that's a gigantic gap. How do you come up with a gap like that? You
Yeah.
know, I can understand 5 to 20 feet, but 5 to 160 feet.
Yeah.
How big is this thing? I don't even think I don't know how big the flying dinosaurs, the pterodactyls were, but I mean that's insane. You know, 160 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. So what's the future for your podcast in your projection?
I mean, I hope to get a lot more guests. You know, I I've honestly that's my favorite thing, and I actually had taken about 8 months off from the podcast because of my work schedule. I was working like 90 hours a week, and
Yeah.
I just couldn't I I couldn't even think about that that kind of stuff. You know, how to research and you know then I had to edit and all this stuff, and it wasn't feasible for me. So I took off a long time for those 8 months, and I lost my train of thought right now. What were we talking
Well, we were
about?
talking about wingspans, and I was asking what your projection for the show is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, so that's what happens when you work so much.
Yeah.
You lose the train of thought. No, so the projection of the show, like I said, I love everybody that I've interviewed on that show. I mean, everybody that I've come across, amazing people. You know, from the podcasters to the paranormal investigators to the demonologist, everybody was so cool. You know, I've never met such great, knowledgeable, and accepting people in any other field I've ever been in.
Yeah.
So my projection is I want to really, you know, expand that, you know, and get maybe some TV personalities or celebrities and stuff like that on there as well, and see, you know, some of their experiences and stuff.
That is fantastic. So any plugs? Anything else we need to know about? You're doing something for you're filming somewhere you said with your dad?
So yeah, me and my dad are going to be doing this show called Paranormal Talk. Basically, the same type of thing as the podcast, but with my dad. And
Yeah.
you know, he's been wanting to do something with me. Me and him always have a lot of fun. So, I mean, we don't live near each other, so it's basically like a Zoom type thing. That's going to be on YouTube eventually on the Warped Reality Podcast YouTube channel. I'm going to throw it on there, and it's going to be on the Staten Island cable, you know, community television thing. I also do from time to time. I do this paranormal talk on Alt Space VR, which is a virtual reality like community,
Right.
and you could also get it on the computer as well too. And basically, people put on their own shows. You could sing and play guitar, and with your avatar and stuff, and people could be in virtual reality and listen to you. So I have my own paranormal talk show on there where
Wow.
yeah, my favorite thing about the whole paranormal thing is I really love people's interactions with it. That's my biggest thing. Like, I want people to call in 845-600-0744, by the way, and tell them tell me their experiences. My whole thing about when people tell me their experiences is, listen, if you say it's true and you say it's real, then that's real enough for me.
Mm.
I'm a prison guard. I deal with con artists all day.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that, the majority of the people are honest people, and I give them this platform on virtual reality also, and they come in and they tell their paranormal experiences, and I've gotten like a good 150 people in there at a time,
Mm.
listening to other people's experiences and sharing their own.
Wow.
So I'm actually doing one tonight, because I think I'm actually going to try and incorporate that with the YouTube and the podcast as well,
Mm.
as far as with the experiences and stuff.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Joe, it's a pleasure, and look forward to doing some more work with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Worries. Right. Thanks very much, everyone. That is it. Goodbye. See you later.
Have a good night.